As you know, Mr. Secretary, there have been significant increases in near misses and runway incursions occurring all over the country. And whether it's Texas, California, Massachusetts, or most recently here in Washington, D.C., these incursions are not subsiding, and they are very alarming. According to data we received from the FAA, in calendar year 2022, there were 1,696 runway incursion incidents, and since the beginning of this year, we've already had 266 runway incidents. Even with the significant investment Congress provided the FAA in FY23, we're still seeing very concerning, unacceptable numbers, and you yourself just recently expressed your concerns about the FAA's lack of accountability for these runway incursions as last week's safety summit. But knowing that most of us here in the Senate, we fly on a weekly basis, and we certainly encounter our own flight mishaps from cancellations due to mechanical problems or crew staffing problems, it just seems that it's just another reason to be concerned about the safety of the traveling public. Given this committee has been providing funds to address runway incursions specifically for several years, why are existing safety measures that have been previously used to mitigate these incursions no longer effective?
Well, I do want to emphasize the effectiveness of our safety systems in terms of maintaining an aviation system that is exceptionally safe, while recognizing that we can't just rest on that without continually working to raise the bar. And what I mean by that is that while it is an extraordinary fact that in a typical year the number of passengers losing their lives in commercial aviation crashes is zero, we need to be just as animated and just as energized about these near misses. Now, the runway incursion numbers that we pay the most attention to are the severe ones. They're called Category A or B, and there is a definite increase in those types of incidents. In past years, they've occurred at a rate of roughly once per month. Right now, they are this year occurring at a rate that is roughly double that. And of course, the only number we want to see, again, is zero. This is why the FAA convened the Safety Summit last week, took a number of steps and is continuing to take steps, including this week, what's called a SAFO, or a safety alert, going throughout the system to encourage a higher degree of vigilance, while we're also looking at engineering solutions that might make a difference. We think that the uptick is partly related to the exceptionally fast surge in demand and the swift return to the skies, faster than even the most optimistic scenarios that we heard a couple of years ago. We need to make sure, of course, that as that system comes back to that high level of demand, there is no negative safety impact to that. We don't take for granted for a second the safety record of U.S. aviation, and we'll continue to be focused on maintaining that. And that is reflected in the budget with requested funds for system modernization, also for increased staffing in air traffic control so that there is less pressure on the existing workforce, and we know that that demand is only going to grow.
And so you think that with the requests that you have in now, you think that that would help mitigate a lot of this?
Yes, I think that will keep us on track for continuing to make the improvements that need to be made. FAA is rightly concerned with maintaining gains from the past, yet not thinking that that's enough, or as I've heard it put memorably, viewing safety never as a destination, that you get there and then you're satisfied, but as a continual journey. These funds will help us to take another fiscal year's worth of step on that journey.
Okay, and one thing that another one I want to ask you about, because it's really important, there's such a driver shortage in the trucking industry. And last month, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration provided my staff with participation data for the Safe Driver Apprenticeship pilot program, which I was really excited about because hopefully we can meet the needs of this. Boy, we learned a lot after COVID with the supply chains. But this 3-year pilot program was included in the infrastructure law and is based on the Drive Safe Act, and that I co-sponsored last Congress. Outside of this pilot, current law provides 18 to 20-year-olds from operating a commercial motor vehicle in interstate commerce. This means that a 20-year-old driver in Mississippi is allowed to drive more than 350 miles from Gulfport, Mississippi to South Haven at the very northern end of the state, but cannot drive the extra mile from South Haven to Memphis, Tennessee, which is right there, and obviously a great need right there. This makes little practical and economic sense to me, but although the pilot program is intended to accommodate up to 1,000 carriers and 3,000 enrolled apprentices at any given time, the initial participation data is just alarmingly underwhelming. At the time of the presentation from the FMCSA, only 21 carriers had been approved for participation, and 4 apprentices were in the program. 1, 2, 3, 4. We could take up to 3,000. So some in the trucking industry have indicated that burdensome program requirements, which were not included in the Drive Safe Act nor the infrastructure bill, are a major deterrent to carrier participation. For example, the FMCSA requires participants to install inward-facing cameras on themselves in the vehicles, which invites legitimate concerns about privacy. And if the participation rate remains this low of 4, it is unlikely that the pilot will provide enough credible data to inform future policy making on this issue. So what are DOT and the FMCSA doing to improve participation in the program and to ensure that requirements hindering enrollment are removed? Because this is huge in Mississippi. We need drivers.
Well, FMCSA is hard at work launching this pilot. We're able to take applications beginning last summer, and as you noted, I think it's up to 22 motor carriers are approved. We got another 22 that have been approved by FMCSA and are just working through the process. So far, we would like to see, we agree, we'd like to see a higher level of participation. So some steps on that have included making information available to 1,500 carriers who meet the safety requirements. FMCSA did that some weeks ago. There's also a paid media campaign that took place in February that we're hoping will build interest, and we'll continue using social media and outreach to the high school graduating class of 2023 about this program. Any requirement that is in the program is for the purpose of safety, and safety will always be our first priority. But we are very interested in getting the level of participation that'll get us good data to see if we can continue in this direction without compromising safety.
Mr. Secretary, I'm a strong proponent of the FAA Contract Tower Program, and it just helps enhance aviation safety at 7 small airports in Mississippi and around the country. However, I have heard concerns that some contract towers lack the same type of equipment as the FAA staffed towers, which is so much has been focused on our conversations of aviation safety and near misses. It seems to me that the controllers at contract tower airports should have access to the same radar displays and other equipment to increase their situational awareness, especially as operations continue to rise. Can you please tell me what steps the FAA is taking to ensure contract towers are properly equipped?
Well, first, let me make clear that the FAA is committed to the contract tower program. We know the difference that it can make at a lot of facilities and communities. And I should note that the funding requested in the President's budget ensures that these federal contract towers will have the staffing that is necessary to meet their safety mission. And for FAA-owned facilities, that also goes to equipment needs. Now, there are a number of towers in the program that have expressed interest in additional or different forms of equipment. There's currently not a non-federal system for these towers, but we're actively exploring ways to best meet their needs, recognizing that there is a different setup and a distinct mission that these federal contract towers meet, but wanting to make sure they have everything that's required in order for them to meet that mission.
Thank you for that. And I want to talk a little bit about detectors with the train derailments in the East Palestine, Ohio. There's been a renewed focus on rail safety, obviously, but specifically on the wayside and hot box detectors on train routes. And as you know, trains use these detectors to notify the railroad when there is a problem so it can be addressed. It's my understanding the tracks in East Palestine actually had these detectors. But while mandating this technology may seem like a good idea now, this technology has existed for decades, and I'm just concerned that mandating just this technology would lock the railroads into using outdated technology. So new technologies are already being tested, such as onboard detectors that would monitor each train car from a centralized location. But can you tell me how the administration's budget request keeping pace with the railroads in terms of safety, innovation, and technology using this specific?
Well, the budget request supports the FRA building the team that is needed for everything from inspectors to research and development. And I should note, of course, that our work also supports, with the funding that's come from Congress, supports the physical infrastructure improvements that have benefited rail safety through things like our CRISI program and our railroad crossing elimination program. But specifically with regard to the wayside detection technologies, there are two categories of them, and one is those that can detect a developing fault in a rolling stock. That's where you have these so-called hot box detectors that, for example, can note a difference in temperature in a bearing or an axle that could be an indication of a fault. And then others that are effectively sounding an alarm, identifying a condition that requires immediate attention and actions. I don't want to get ahead of the NTSB's findings, which will, when the final report comes out, which may take a year or more, probably have a higher level of detail. But I will say, broadly speaking, our view is that we need more and not less rigorous standards for railroad safety. And that may include technologies, including wayside detection devices, can also include approaches like the added requirements that attach to a high hazard flammable unit train, and just better enforcement capabilities so that we can make sure railroads are accountable for their compliance. Right now, a multi-billion-dollar railroad might face just a six-figure fine, even if found responsible for an egregious violation that resulted in loss of life. And we just don't believe that's enough to get their attention. And it's one of the measures in the proposed bipartisan legislation here in the Senate that we embrace, which is that it would add teeth to those enforcement powers. So whether it's specifically with regard to wayside detection systems or more broadly in terms of the research, the enforcement, and the infrastructure improvements that are being made. I believe this budget will help us prepare for that, but also recognize that this is going to be a journey that has to be refreshed and renewed every single year as we learn more from conditions on the ground.